Hey there! What I wanted to do today was a bit of a talk video. I've been doing more of these recently and people continue to respond very positively to these. So something I was thinking a lot about recently and that I think we can apply to fountain pens quite easily is the concept of change, which I find a very interesting concept. And the reason I started to think about it is that I was listening to a song from two Dutch comedians, and they have a sentence in it about change. Now, for the lovers of Dutch, from Cote and the B, who were, well, one is gone now, but were brilliant as a duo, I think. It was their song of the opening of the Holland Festival, and they sing: Wie zichzelf niet wil verliezen, die zal duidelijk moeten kiezen, which comes down to something along the lines of, if you do not want to lose yourself, you'll have to choose. You have to make certain decisions. And to me, that concept of choice and change is very interesting. So I considered doing a Stoic video on it, but then I thought it's not necessarily really Stoic. Let's see if we can apply it to pens. When it comes to fountain pens, there is an overwhelming amount of choice that you have. And I think that amount of choice can be quite overwhelming. Think of you starting out as a pen user. Maybe you are a new fountain pen user, in which case, particularly warm welcome to my channel, and I hope it will be useful. But you have all these choices. There are various brands, there are different pen materials, there are different nib materials and nib grades, fine, extra fine, medium, broad, all those kinds of things. There are different filling systems, pen materials. I think I said pen materials, but now I forgot. There's different paper types. There are different ink types. And how do you not get overwhelmed in the face of that many choices? I think it's very difficult, and I find that interesting. I find decision making interesting. It's something I have done some research on for my PhD, for example. And even before that, I did my bachelor stuff in a group that worked a lot on decision making. So I find the concept very interesting. And I think the first thing to embrace is that making decisions is actually very difficult. And there are some interesting things we know from psychological research. For example, we know that people like to have options. And having options is good. But if you have too many options, people start to get stressed. It becomes stressful to make a choice. Think about it. Think of I find it really interesting in North America here, coming from Europe. The amount of frozen pizza you can purchase in a supermarket is overwhelming. In the Netherlands, when I left there, that was about one part of the freezer was frozen pizza. In North America, it is an entire freezer, so it's an entire aisle of frozen pizzas of different brands. In no way is this a judgment. I'm just saying the amount of how many pizzas can you choose from, and do you want to choose from? So that can get very overwhelming. And it is the same with fountain pens. With all these variables I just mentioned, there are so many choices to make, right? How do you not get overwhelmed? Well, I think the first part of not getting overwhelmed with the amount of choice is realizing that it is normal to feel overwhelmed. I don't know how you cannot feel overwhelmed, again, especially when you're starting out with fountain pens. You don't really know what kind of nib you like yet, or filling system or material. And I've mentioned this before in videos, but this, to me, this comes back to the difference between exploitation and exploration. Initially, you are in an exploration phase and you explore different things, and that's how you learn what you like. And then later, as you progress, you start to exploit more, and you get a much better sense for what you like and what you don't like. Maybe you love arco-celluloid, maybe you hate it. I know people who hate it. That's fine. But now you've made that choice and you know what to do. But initially it's very difficult. So embrace that you are probably in an exploration phase. And that's completely okay. You learn what you like by exploring. It's the only way to do it, trying out different things. Now, of course, unfortunately, with fountain pens, that can become very costly, but fountain pens also resell pretty well, so it's not necessarily a huge issue. And I think that is a good first step in realizing you're probably going to feel overwhelmed. Once you know what you like, you start to exploit more. And I've had other conversations about this in videos, so I don't want to get spend too much time on that. But it is a part of that. Once you've made your decisions, you know what you like, you start to exploit more, and you build up your collection of Arco pens or Lamy Safaris or whatever it is that you particularly like. For me, the thing I was most interested in today was that concept of change. Because as you make choices, you may also find that you start to change. And I have noticed that a lot. I'll give you a concrete example. When I started off with fountain pens, I bought medium nibs because I sounded like a good in-between, right? It's not quite broad, it's not fine. Then I met Sven at a pen show, and Sven had a beautiful collection of pens. He very graciously let me try them all, and he was very much into broad nibs. And his statement was, if you cannot use a broad nib, if your handwriting is too small, you need to practice until you can use a broad nib. And he just loved broad nibs. And then I got into broad nibs because I really liked their smoothness. But I have found over the years, and at this point I can say it's quite many years of using fountain pens, that I actually like a good fine nib too, something I hated before. 5 years ago, I wouldn't want to be found dead using a fine nib, so to speak. I'm obviously exaggerating, right? But I always focus on the broad nibs. But then you find that if you have a really nice fine nib and it's well polished, it's well made, it can be very balanced, it can still be smooth, it can still be quite wet, and you get more words on a page, and you can maybe fill out forms that otherwise you wouldn't be able to fill out with your triple broads, etc. So that's change. I have found that there was a time I explored so many different inks, and the crazier the better. And I have found that I've become more conservative now with my inks. I only have a couple brands that I use, and I like them, and your brands may be different, and that's perfectly fine. But for me, those solid brands, Mont Blanc, Waterman, Diamine, there are a couple of others. Recently I've been using a couple of Monteverdes that I really like. Their Garnet, for example, is a beautiful shade of ink. I'm really using those. And I've become a bit more conservative. I'm still not someone who uses an enormous amount of blue ink, but still I like my Leonardo blue a lot. I will always love Waterman blue. It was one of the first bottle inks I had. Actually, it was the first bottle ink I had was Waterman blue. I like that. I like to have a couple blues on hand, but I don't need the truly exotic inks anymore. And I find that when it comes to specific properties that people love a lot, like sheen, for example, I'm not really into that. And that's okay. Again, this is choice. You make certain choices. And I still love my deep red Mont Blanc corn poppy and that kind of stuff, but overall, a good red, a good green, a good blue, a good purple, and I'm quite happy. For some people, purple may already be exotic, right? So that's the choice part, but then there's the change part. The change for me is the very exotic inks no longer really appeal to me, and the really exotic stuff with shimmer in it and such, that has never really done it for me. I initially kind of went along with that hype a bit just because I felt that everybody was doing it, so I should probably do it too, because we know that peer pressure is a thing, but it's not for me. And so in other ways I've changed in certain ink brands I used to like and I don't like anymore, and all that is fine. This is not meant as a negative video commenting negatively on specific brands or something. It's just a matter of I found that they're not for me, and that's okay. So you go through that change. I've had changes with nibs, and I have had changes with ink. Likewise, I've had changes with paper. I absolutely loved my Claire Fontaine Triomphe and that kind of paper. I liked the Gelalo at the start, but I found that the laid paper, so that has sort of ribs in it, like J. Lalo, Verger de France, Verger, Laid. That paper's just not really for me. I like the way it looks, but I don't like to write on it. That's another change that I have gone through. And as time progresses, we tend to change. If pens are not the greatest example, think of all the vegetables you hated as a kid but love now. For me, sun-dried tomatoes. Hated sun-dried tomatoes as a kid. Now I love it and everything. So things change, and the final point that I wanted to make in this video, because I've already shown you too much of the peculiar processes in my mind, I feel, but is that it's okay. It's okay to change, but do have the courage to then go against the grain once in a while. If shimmer ink is not for you, don't use it. If everybody is using number 8 nibs, but you don't like number 8 nibs, you like number 5 nibs, you just like a small nib on a pen, that's okay. If you don't like Arco, there's something wrong with, that's okay. That's perfectly okay. I sold 2 of my Arco pens. It's nice, but you change. That actually is a good other example of change. I have the one that I really like until I got rid of it. So it's change, and that's okay. You can embrace it. You'll go through all kinds of changes in your life that extends to all things in your life, and fountain pens are not different. And there may even be a day, they may come that you say, fountain pens, I don't really care anymore. And that's okay too. It's okay. It's all okay. Change is okay. And choice is okay. In fact, choice is a good thing. Just not too many options, because then it becomes a bad thing. Anyway, that was it for today. I hope that was of some interest and not too boring. How do you feel about choice and change in fountain pens? Please let me know in the comments below. I hope this was useful, and I'll gladly see you later. Bye!